Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and a very warm welcome to PTV World News. I'm Shahzad Qayyum with the top stories of this hour. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman calls Prime Minister Imran Khan to inquire about his health. Prime Minister Imran Khan lauds transformational Green Saudi Initiative and Green Middle East Initiative recently announced by the Crown Prince. Shab-e Barat will be observed tonight across the country with reverence and humility. "41 more people die from coronavirus while 4,525 test positive across country during last 24 hours. Registration for vaccination of senior citizens aged 50 to 59 begins from tomorrow. Eligible citizens can send CNIC number to SMS to 1166 for registration. President Dr. Arif Alvi tests positive for COVID-19, prays for all patients who are suffering due to pandemic. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi meets his Turkish counterpart in Dushanbe. The two sides discuss upon peace process in detail and term the Ninth Heart of Asia Istanbul Process Conference as welcome step for peace in Afghanistan. Anti-polio campaign of various duration is underway across the country. The SOPs to protect from coronavirus are being strictly implemented during the campaign. US President Joe Biden says situation in Myanmar is absolutely outrageous after security forces opened fire at a funeral. Pakistan tennis star Ishamul Haq Qureshi and his double partner Mayamur Kekmanovic of Serbia qualify for the quarterfinals of Miami Open tennis tournament. For the moment, for more details and live streaming, log on to our website world.ptv.com.pk. You can find us on Facebook page with the name of PTV World and follow us on Twitter at WorldPTV. Thanks for watching and it's goodbye for now.
Hello and welcome to Politics Today. I'm Farrukh Pitafi. Today we are going to talk about the political situation in the country. And not only that, there are certain developments. The first development is a bit bothering. The President of Pakistan has contracted COVID-19. That is not all. The Defense Minister earlier also announced that he has also gotten infected. The government is moving towards increasing the restrictions, especially in the areas where infection is spreading. COVID-19, it seems, is here to stay, and it keeps on coming back. This is the third wave, and this third wave seems to have an impact on people and their lives. So we are going to talk about this as well. But the political situation is in front of you. We know that Yusuf Raza Girdani became the leader of the opposition in the Senate. And then we saw exchange of very tough language between the PMLN and People's Party. Again, it seems that there are moments when they actually disagree very aggressively, and there are moments they start actually working together. But this is not all. Just a few hours earlier, we heard that the Finance Minister of Pakistan is going to change as well. And the reason why it is happening is that the current Finance Minister, Dr. Hafiz Sheikh, was given the charge of ministry for 6 months till the time he becomes a parliamentarian. But he could not actually win in the election, and he is not a parliamentarian. So his term expires in June. So government, for the sake of stability, has actually chosen another name. Hamad Azhar has actually worked on the ministry, in the Ministry of Revenue, and his work is quite noted. So he has been tipped as the next finance minister. Having said that, there is another fight that is going on. Opposition, particularly PMLN, has been very critical of the new State Bank of Pakistan Autonomy Bill, ordinance actually. And it seems that they don't have all the facts. Today we are going to talk about all these matters and more. In order to help us understand these issues, on Skype we are joined by Dr. Niaz Murza, who is a noted political economist, also a columnist, and Dr. Abid Qayyum Salari, a senior economist, also joins us on telephone. The moment his line is through, I'm going to welcome him as well. Dr. Niaz Murza, let me start with you. Let me first ask you about these new changes that we have seen in the cabinet. There seems to be a reshuffle on cards. Particularly, we are talking about the finance minister. Your take on this, sir?
Well, it's come out of the blue, and it's quite a surprise in many ways because of the situation that we are facing. First of all, the budget will be due in 2-3 months, and I think the preparations must have already started. Then the IMF program is starting, and there will be more negotiations that will have to be done with the IMF. Then there is this State Bank bill that is being introduced. So this was a very busy time for the finance minister. And just 3 weeks ago, after Mr. Hafiz Sheikh lost the Senate election, the Prime Minister had said that he has his full confidence and he should continue. So now to come back and say that his performance was not good, and inflation and so on, that has been there for a while. So I think it's quite surprising.
Just to be clear, Dr. Saab, that was not stated that his performance was not good. There seems to be a legal problem here, right? You cannot say a minister without holding a seat in the parliament, and that he could not win. On the other side, being the finance minister, you have to actually chair the NEC, and there is a court order that you cannot actually, head NEC or chair NEC if you are not a minister. If you are an advisor, you can
Yes,
sit
I know
there.
that, but he still had a couple of months of his 6 month assignment left, and then there are other ways of getting him in. If there's a will, there is a way. There was a possibility of getting him into Senate through the KP Assembly. So there are all sorts of ways. So I think this will, unsettle markets, and it's come at the bad time, and I don't think this is a very good decision.
Okay. Regarding another very important issue, the autonomy of State Bank of Pakistan. On one side, we keep on hearing the opposition leaders, particularly hailing from PMLN, criticizing and, saying that somehow the State Bank of Pakistan is going to become, God forbid, the East India Company of sorts, if it is given autonomy. On the other side, we see that the government and the State Bank have clarified that there is nothing of this kind in the overall concept of the ordinance that has been introduced. Your take, sir.
Well, I think we need to strike a balance. There is no doubt that the State Bank does need independence from the government. We've seen what happened during the last couple of years of the PMLN government, where they kept an over rated exchange rate, did not depreciate it on time, and that led to a current account deficit, and then a crisis. And this has happened even before during the last years of Musharraf. So I am fully in favor of independence for the State Bank, but then it should be independent not just of the government, but also the IMF, and the way the last governor was appointed at 24 hours notice, and an IMF employee at a time when Pakistan is getting
Hang on, Dr. Saab, with due respect, you have also worked outside the country. No matter what, Dr. Bakar Raza is a Pakistani national. Is it, really good to actually question anybody's loyalties? Because he is a Pakistani and he is very qualified man, sir.
But if you look anywhere, this is a conflict of interest, that you're working for the IMF, you become governor, and then you're dealing with an IMF loan. By any international standards, this will be considered a conflict of interest. And then, the process within 24 hours, I'm not questioning his loyalty, but, there are conflicts of interest. So I think the main thing that is missing in this bill is that, what they need to specify is, the process of the appointment of the key people, governors and the deputy governors. And I think there should be a very independent committee for that, consisting of very eminent economists of Pakistan,
right,
who are based in Pakistan.
And that under this ordinance, that charge has been taken away from the finance ministry. And the finance ministry will not be represented there, but there will be an independent, committee that will be formed, and the board or the committee that thus will be formed will be with the advice of the State Bank of Pakistan.
That will be very helpful if they can have. I mean, the thing is, we still don't have the draft before us. It's just bits and pieces that is coming through the media. So the first thing is to share the, full draft, so that we can see what it contains, and, there can be a healthy debate. But bottom line, independence from the government and independence from IMF, and a thorough process for the governor and other positions, that is crucial.
Right. But do you want to comment on the politics of PDM as well? There seems to be certain moments when people feel that PDM is over. Then there are moments when one sees that they might have some kind of rallying cause, and that's why they work together.
Yeah, I think it's a political seesaw. That's what I wrote a couple of weeks back. We've been seeing that for the last 18 months, up, down, and this is a big setback. Certainly, what's happening right now. This is not normal seesaw. This is a big move towards the PTI. But then I wouldn't go so far as to say that it's, game over for PDM. I think many of, their aims and rationale are still valid. The fact that we don't have civilian supremacy, there is interference from outside, the political system is not free, and then the performance of PTI, it keeps shooting itself in the foot. and now you see that PPP is already it's saying that this is a victory for PDM because they produced the loss for the fee shape, which has now led to his firing. So let's see. I think there's a big setback, and it will take time for them to find.
You made a comment at the start as well, and I just want to connect this point that you made about the accomplishment of opposition in denying Vijay Saab a Senate seat, and the fact that you actually disagreed with the change in the finance ministry. Let me ask you, earlier everybody was complaining that a person who is not a parliamentarian, who is not a politician, has been made a finance minister. Now we see a person who is a politician and very, informed as well, he is going to take charge. Don't you think that it is good news for the parliamentary democracy in the country?
Well, I mean, there was a way of balancing both objectives and aims. They could have, found another way to, get him into the Senate. In fact, even in the beginning, they should not have, fielded him from the National Assembly, given their weak numbers there. So, the ideal thing would have been through the KP Assembly, where they have a rock-solid majority, and there's no way they would have lost that seat.
Yeah, but Dr. Saab, nobody has time machine, right? We cannot change the past. What we can do is right in this moment. So the government has, the government has done what it has done, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's no easy solution. So, okay, so now it's done. Now let's see how the new guy does, We need to look at his own experiences, etc. You need a heavyweight.
Right, Hamad Azhar, you know Hamad Azhar, right? I mean, he has been in the ministry, around the ministry, in the Minister for Industries, then Revenue as well. So he has quite a record.
Yeah, but then, for the Ministry of Finance and where Pakistan is today with, IMF and inflation and, stagflation and so many problems, you need a real heavyweight. Yeah, I would say even a bigger heavyweight than Hafiz Sheikh. He himself was not that strong. There are other people that I could name, but, somebody real heavyweight who enjoys the confidence of the market knows him, IMF would know him.
And we are going to talk about that. Dr. Niaz Mirza, I'm told Mehtab Haider, senior journalist, joins us, covers economics and finance beat. Mehtab Haider, thank you very much for being part of the program. What can you tell us about the change in the finance ministry that has just been announced? We have seen a couple of tweets, right?
Well, actually, the Prime Minister was quite disturbed because of rising inflationary pressure. And, basically, this rising inflation is the phenomena of imported fuel and commodities. Because, when you are importing fuel and palm oil and commodities as well, for instance, wheat and sugar, so it was very difficult for any finance minister to curtail inflationary pressure, keeping in view the 18th Amendment. And there was a growing pressure in this regard. But this change has occurred at a time when Pakistan is trying to lure international investors to launch its Eurobond. It's exactly the same time when we have already communicated the Pakistan story to the international investors by apprising them that the IMF has revived the program under the Standard Fund facility. But now this change certainly raises question on the future prospects of economy under the IMF program. But it is the decision of the Prime Minister, he can change his team, and because he had authority in the Senate election, and he has a face defeat in the Senate election, so he could continue his portfolio till 10th of June. And Prime
But
Minister
again,
preferred
10th
that
of June would have
instead of
been,
waiting till
Mehtab,
10th of June,
Mehtab,
because
10th
budget.
of June would have once again been a deadline. And then inevitably one would have to actually bring about some change. So the sooner it is done, the better it is. But Mehtab, thank you very much for your precious time. Thank you very much for being part of the program. I'm told Dr. Salman Shah, former finance minister and advisor to Punjab government, actually joins us. Dr. Salman Shah, thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Dr. Saab, at this moment there have been changes at the center. We have heard that the finance minister will not retain his portfolio and Hamad Azhar is going to get it. Can you actually reflect on this decision and how it is going to play out in the international market, sir?
Well, I think it has several aspects to it. One is the Supreme Court's decision that he has to be part of the Senate and to continue as finance minister, and after losing the seat, now until he is able to get that seat in the future, he cannot be the finance minister. And we have yet to see whether he'll continue as advisor finance or not. I think then also the public outcry on the media regarding the difficult economic situation in terms of inflation and in terms of unemployment, etc., was also a factor in a way that the finance minister has to come and convince the public of his policies. And Dr. Sheikh was not very keen on the media, and he was not able to to kind of create a narrative of reforms and how ultimately the economy would grow and people would be able to have a more prosperous future. So I think that might have played a role as well. But obviously, we can only speculate at what was ultimately what is the balance.
Dr. Saab, you have been a finance minister also. You know the system inside out. At this moment, Pakistan has made, commitments to actually stabilize, bring in macroeconomic stability. On the other side, the concern is that we seem to be facing the third wave of corona infections. In that situation, this aspect of job security and business continuity doesn't seem to be that much easy a task. Do you think that the next finance minister has a work cut out for him?
Yes, certainly. I think the situation is a very challenging situation, particularly when you look at the pandemic and we are in a third wave, in a lockdown. It will ultimately affect the economy. Already we know the service industry is badly affected, and so we have to ensure that we have strong social security nets, and the SRs program and other programs can provide the relief necessary for people who are going to be affected by this. And also the IMF program is back on track, but it may have to be able to handle any disruption which comes along the way. So everything is kind of uncertain in many ways until we get over this third wave.
Mm-hmm. Right. Do we have the kind of fiscal space that might be needed to actually maneuver through this wave? Because there are demands upon demands. On one side, we keep on hearing that Pakistan should be procuring more vaccine. And then there are talks about bailouts for the various sectors as well. Do you think that we have that kind of financial wiggle room, sir?
Well, it will depend upon the impact on the economy. Right now, I think the government is trying its very best to make sure that there is minimum disruption in the economy, and if we can maintain that level, then yes, we can support it. But if it gets worse, and the manufacturing is affected, or if this thing spreads beyond the cities, then I think you will have a different situation on your hands. And in that sense, the IMF program may even be put on hold again, like it happened the last time. So this is a very kind of unique situation. The entire world is grappling with this solution, but ultimately the welfare of the people is what matters. And if there is massive lockdowns, then of course the entire system of management would change, and the government would have to provide income to people in their homes, and that will need special measures.
Right. Dr. Salman Shah, thank you very much for being part of the program. Thank you very much for your precious time. Let me go back to Dr. Niaz Mirza. Dr. Sab, there seems to be a very interesting climate when it comes to political commentary, when it comes to economic commentary as well. On one side, of course, there is opposition which is never going to cut any slack to the government. On the other side, it seems that we are going through post-truth moment of the country, where even the pundits and the experts are also fairly divided, and they don't want to see the other point of view. Do you think that when we are looking at the COVID infections, when we are looking at the various strategies, the government doesn't have that kind of space to maneuver, and yet everybody keeps on criticizing the government despite knowing that there are so many complications, right?
Well, in a way, the government has, lost space because of its own failings too. Pakistan had come out fairly unscathed back in June, mostly because of, natural factors, the summer was there or whatever. And since we were lucky, we should have been able to, take measures to, benefit from that lucky break. But then, what you see again is, the repetition of the same kind of mistakes with the second wave, the third wave, and now with the vaccination. Right now, we have the lowest vaccination rate in South Asia. Right now, Bangladesh has done about 5 million shots. Pakistan has done about 500,000 shots. This huge disparity, forget India, which is, 20 million and above, because it produces its own vaccination, but, Bangladesh doesn't. Look at the other countries. So what is wrong? Why has Pakistan not been able to, get its act together and, arrange vaccination? It's going so slowly. And the fact that, now we have a situation where, the president, the prime minister, the defense minister, all are down. These guys should have been, vaccinated much earlier, and, they should have done it publicly. So there was, confidence within the public. We have such, high degree of hesitancy even among doctors, the general public. So
and we keep on hearing that as well, that in Islamabad and in Lahore and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa as well, the hospital staff is also badly affected by the COVID outbreak. But regarding the president of Pakistan, he actually, when he tweeted, he also mentioned that he has taken one dose of the vaccine. The other will be administered in a couple of weeks. But regardless of this, I understand what you're saying, but I hope you understand what I'm trying to actually submit here as well, that financial capacity is essential to, purchase vaccines. Then you actually gave a very generous bailout last year when COVID actually started. In that situation, is it very difficult for the pundits and commentators to see that the government may not have that kind of wiggle room, sir?
Well, we were told that, they've set aside $150 million, but then suddenly I don't know what happened to that, and we don't hear much about that. So there hasn't been, a real clear strategy from the beginning. And I think, you don't need to, vaccinate the whole 210 million, because such a large percentage is children below the age of 18. So it was just about 70-80 million people that you had to vaccinate. And if you do the mathematics, it wouldn't really have cost too much. You're getting some free. You could have pitched in a little bit from your own side and done a smoother job, because Bangladesh almost the same per capita income, and if it can do a much better job, 10 times more, why can't Pakistan? So I think there's a lot of things that the government has to look at, and again,
No, that is true, sir. But regarding Bangladesh, I'm sure that you have followed the Economist's commentary on Bangladesh. It seems that while the freedoms might be, in question in Bangladesh, the GDP actually keeps on growing despite COVID. It has outperformed India, certainly has performed better than Pakistan. But at this moment, there are so many contradictions. One has to actually appreciate the difficult situation in which the government might be regarding economy. No.
Well, again, it's true that it inherited a mess from the last government. There's no doubt about it. And then you had COVID. But then there's an equal measure of incompetence that you can also point out. Those things are fixed. And ultimately, it's the government that takes over in 2018, which was supposed to, resolve those issues. And, I think it could have done a much better job of, doing things. So, for example, finding, keeping the momentum on CPAC, that was the main, investment source for you. Look at, how Chinese foreign investment has gone down after 2018. There's no momentum on CPAC. Similarly, on tax collection, the performance has been so weak. We didn't cross the 2017-18 levels for about 2 years, and this year also it's just going to be a little bit higher than that. So there are so many issues where you can point out. Ultimately, there are challenges, and the government has to deal with them. And as you said, despite COVID and everything, Bangladesh is dealing with them. And we were, told so many promises.
No, but again, since you have talked about revenue collection, don't you think it might be difficult for a government which has to actually administer lockdowns at various places because of COVID, and then go and collect revenues from the same businesses who were asked to shutter for the time being?
Well, we had a shutdown, for about, I think 6 weeks. It started end of March, and by May, June, it was all gone. We opened up much earlier than India and Bangladesh. We took the risk, and we were lucky it paid off. By June, things started improving, but still we were not able to, get things back on the feet as quickly. There was a spurt of export earlier on, but now, Bangladesh and India are again, ahead of us even on export. So I think there are a lot of missed opportunities. You can keep complaining about the hand that you are delivered, but then ultimately, you have to, play according to that and, make the best out of it. And we can't really say that, the PTI government has, played the hand to the best of its capacities and the best to how that hand could have been played. So I think now again we might have another, cabinet reshuffle. And this was probably the first of it, but then I wouldn't say that this was a very encouraging, sign. If it was somebody, better than Hafiz Sheikh, one could have been happy. But, he's a smart guy. He's young, he's energetic.
Nobody is doubting his smarts or his abilities. The only thing is Pakistan happens to be a parliamentary democracy, and you have so much room to actually use laws to actually bring in people who might be technocrats, and eventually it has to be the parliament to which the power has to revert. So the parliament is reasserting itself. Is it bad?
Well, there's ways of getting people into the parliament. There are reserved seats, there's the Senate. So there's a way of, doing things. It's not impossible. So, I think with such a critical position, they should have done their homework better and found a way of, getting a better person than Hafiz Sheikh come in, or at least, continue with him. With Hamad, I don't think he'll give the same confidence globally or domestically as being, a heavyweight who has the experience of, dealing with all these issues. So let's see how it
No,
turns out.
you'll have to qualify what constitutes a heavyweight. Political background, son of a former governor, then also once head of a party, then also has negotiated with FATF. Don't you think that actually gives you a good portfolio of a man's capacity?
I'm saying, technical economic knowledge, then, maybe, previous experience as Minister of Finance, contacts in the global, circles and so on. So on a lot of these matters, I don't think, he is the ideal candidate at this time. If it was a more normal situation, I would have agreed with it. But where, the Pakistani economy is, you really needed an experienced man
Right.
with strong technical.
Let me bring you back to the political side of the things, right? One aspect that is important is you have actually commented on PDM's disagreements and agreements. At this moment, do you honestly see that they have anything common left between them? Bringing down the government is, it might be in the interest of at least one or two parties, but when it comes to the overall situation, People's Party doesn't seem that much interested in bringing down the federal government because it has to work in Punjab to spread its message, and it needs 2 years that are remaining.
Yeah, I think even if the aim is the same, which is to bring down the government, the strategies are so different that it's difficult to see how they can survive now. PPP is solely interested in within Parliament maneuvers, and there is an argument to be made that the momentum that PDM had gained in the last 4 to 6 weeks was entirely because of the strategy that the PPP had suggested in terms of participating in the by-elections and then in the Senate elections, and the way that it was able to defeat Hafiz Sheikh. That was typical Zardari politics. And then there is the fact that we have Ramadan now and the peak COVID situation. So there is time, you can't start the kind of street protest that JUI and PMLN is trying to look. So maybe they can try to find a common ground where they say, okay, let's give another shot, a last shot to the PPP, maybe try something in Punjab or against the speaker. We have 4 to 6 weeks and then see how it goes. But if that also fails, then PPP would have to give an undertaking to then go along the way that the other parties are suggesting. But I don't think PPP will even agree to that. They are just interested in confining themselves to parliamentary maneuvers. So ultimately, the parties will have to find take a decision whether they want to continue like this. And I think all this will play out during Ramadan because nothing much is going to happen after Eid. So I think there will be sort of hibernation time. Then the Maulana is down, Mariam is down with some health issues. So I think we'll see a cooling off period in Ramadan, and then things might pick up after Eid, and then we'll have to see what directions they take.
Right, but you actually think that it is in their common interest to work together? Because it seems that whatever they wanted to get out of it, I mean, PMLN needed a lot of flash and bang. They got that. They got all the attention they needed. People's Party perhaps needed the establishment or the government's attention. They managed to do that as well. So now they don't have any common thread between them left.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, it only makes sense if you have, a common strategy. It's not enough to have a common aim. Even the broad strategies, there should be a broad, commonality. And now it seems, as I said, this could be a middle formula, but I don't think, PPP will even accept this, what I had suggested, of, trying one last time within Parliament. So ultimately, I think they have to take a decision because, the strategies are so different. And that said, the strategies that PMLN and JUI are trying to follow frankly, they don't really need a PPP so much in that. If they're going to go into street protests and all, PPP's contribution towards that would have been minimal. It's really, the crowds that PMLN would bring from Punjab and what JUI would bring from, Balochistan and KP that would matter. So it's quite possible that, they would decide that, we've had enough with the PPP and there's no reason to continue with it, and, they might go their own way, and, then PPP would stay but there is, symbolic value with the PPP and, the numbers it has.
But you're talking about symbolic value, but here's another great value that People's Party brings to the system, and that is moderating influence. Because it seems that there are moments when you listen to Maryam Nawaz Sahib or Maulana Fazlur Rahman Sahib, you think that they are just going to physically attack the system. At that moment, People's Party steps in, and then it actually cools the PDM down. So in that situation, don't you think that whatever remains of PDM minus People's Party might actually be tantamount to being called bedlam?
Yeah, I think they will become more radical, if, the PPP exits from the PDM, and it's clear that, there's no parliamentary way that they can find to, manage things. And it's quite possible that, things might, take a turn for the worst, and, we may see more active, and ugly street protests. And that would be, sad, because, a peaceful street protests are still okay. You have a point, okay, you think, the 2018 elections were, rigged, and you feel that, the establishment is still holding this government together. So you want to protest, but you still have to, keep your protest peaceful, so that, there's no loss of life and, the kind of, mayhem that you would otherwise see. So I hope, they can still come back, and I would then, say there's also a responsibility on the other side, the government and, the establishment to cool things down and, give them
regarding the other party, the major party in opposition, that is PMLN, there seems to be some kind of difference within the party as well. Day before yesterday, there was a statement attributed to Maryam Nawaz. I actually saw it in print, where she is saying that the plan was actually, or somebody's plan was to actually bring down the Punjab government. Right, and the fact that she actually rallied against the idea seems to be that Hamza Shahbaz doesn't become the chief minister of Punjab.
Well, there are two, stories. One says that, the formula was that Pervez Elahi would become the chief of Punjab, and obviously, there's a lot of bad blood between the Chaudhrys and the Sharifs, and then, there is also the fact that PMLQ just has 10 seats. And it really doesn't make sense that, a person with just 10 seats should become the chief minister, and, the second biggest party, which has, close to 150 or what is it, doesn't get the spot. So that is very much easy to understand. But then, there's the second story that there was even an agreement on Hamza. Now, I don't know what that, how true that is. But obviously that's more difficult to, then explain why, the PMLN would hesitate to have him become chief minister if there was a chance. Because, obviously even now the arrangement was that, the Nawaz Sharif side of the family was in the center, and, the Shehbaz Sharif side had Punjab. So even going by that formula, there would have been nothing wrong except for the fact that, the Nawaz Sharif side doesn't have the center right now. But then, it could have been a step towards that, but because if the PTI loses Punjab, that would be a big blow. It would become very, very difficult for the center then to continue. The government will become, very weak, and if, PMLQ leaves the Punjab government, then there's obviously the chance that it might also leave the center.
Yeah,
then,
but the concern that I was actually flagging was primarily about PMLN's internal dynamics. That actually weakens the cause of PMLN and then PDM as well. Dr. Saab, I'm told that we have to conclude the program here. Thank you very much for your precious time. Today, actually, we got a detailed a moment to have a detailed discussion. Dr. Saab, once again, thank you very much. Let me once again thank the guests who earlier joined us on telephone, Dr. Salman Shah and Mehtab Haider. Thank you very much again for being part of the program. We have listened to our participants. The discussion, of course, will continue. We still have to actually look at how the economic teams or finance teams change is going to impact the country's economy. But one thing is for sure, these people whose names are being mentioned, they are known quantity and they are known to actually work positively with the economy. Let us hope in coming days we see reform and also a positive impact on lives of people, because at this moment, because of all these whammies that we have, there is not a double or triple whammy that the country's common people are facing. It is a quadruple or pentuple, whammy, where many things are actually affecting lives. Inflation is there, unemployment, COVID, then other problems as well, international and local. Let us hope in coming days we have consensus and we have a direction to go in, and then the people's lives can be improved as well. This was today's program. Thank you very much for watching. Take care.
I got involved with Pakistan in the 1970s.
My involvement with Pakistan goes back over 50 years.
What endeared me most to Pakistan was the unbelievable hospitality.
And I was so taken by the place that I returned there again and again and again. I must have been there about 20 times, 30 times.
It's become a second home to me, and I have family there.
I love the place, wonderful people, very exciting, and here I am, chairman of the Pakistan Society.
Tonight is the 65th annual dinner for the Pakistan Society.
The society exists to promote good relations between Pakistan and Great Britain.
The role of the Pakistan Society is really to kind of project a very positive view of the country, which doesn't get projected in the general media to the general public very often.
I remember vividly moving from the Foreign Office in London, where I had been in charge of British policy towards South Asia, and discovering that I really had to rethink everything once I arrived in Islamabad. And that made me realize that neither I nor my colleagues in London were really seeing Pakistan and its region clearly enough. quite a troubling conclusion for a senior diplomat, I think, but an important one.
My background for reasons for being on the Pakistan Society is that I served in Pakistan in 2001 at the Command and Staff College in Quetta for 1 year, and then subsequently served a number of times in both Afghanistan and Pakistan, and then principally involved in tonight's event to coordinate the security for His Highness the Aga Khan.
As chairman, I help organize our annual dinners. I preside at our regular evening talks. I chair the committee which runs the society. And I have a great deal of fun doing it.
The Pakistan Society is a thoroughly good thing. It brings together a slice of the British Pakistani community, which is important. They can be a powerful force for good in Pakistan as well as in public life in the United Kingdom.
What endeared me most to Pakistan was the unbelievable hospitality that we received over there. The fact I was asked to come onto the committee and to sort of give something back to the hospitality shown me while I was out in Pakistan was a great opportunity, and so I've been on the committee now for the last 2.5 years.
The Society's purpose is to increase knowledge in this country of Pakistan, its culture, its peoples, its current affairs, and we do that through a series of talks and this great annual dinner that we have each year. In that way, we teach English people, and not simply English people, but many British Pakistanis about their own cultural background, and it's a very, very rich one.
Will you kindly stand to receive His Highness the Aga Khan, accompanied by His Excellency the Acting High Commissioner for Pakistan and the Chairman of the Pakistan Society.
We all watch, year after year, the existential race that will determine Pakistan's long-term fate. We all know and love Pakistan. We all want to do the best we can for Pakistan and its people.
Ladies and gentlemen, Pakistan has been on the path to progress. Despite facing formidable challenges in the past, we as a nation of resilient people have always emerged stronger and stood the tests of time.
As you know, the Pakistan Society has this very good tradition of making an award every year to someone who has made a major contribution to increasing knowledge and understanding of Pakistan. This year, the award has been given to Shoaib Sultan Khan, sitting over here on my left, who's the internationally admired pioneer of rural development and poverty alleviation. And in 2009, Shoaib was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize for